He is a passionate and unrestrained prosecutor who doesn't hesitate to use force for investigations. He is a handsome con artist skilled in disguise, charming all the girls around him. These two unexpectedly cross paths in prison. This is a resort about to be developed. As it is a migratory bird habitat, numerous environmentalists protested the development, unexpectedly leading to violent clashes. One day, a group of people suddenly joined the protesters and then violently attacked the police who came to maintain order, leading to a mass violence incident. Several police officers were injured in the chaos. The prosecutor in charge of this case is Jae Suk-ka. The investigation revealed that a development company hired thugs to pose as protesters and attack the police, but the company's president denied the allegations. After this violent incident, public opinion began to shift. On the contrary, the developer gained favor because of this. The prosecutor keenly realized that there must be a hidden hand behind this matter and wanted to use the arrested suspect as a breakthrough to uncover the truth. But the suspect acted very innocent, claiming to be an environmentalist and that the attack on the police was an accident. To prove he was part of an environmental group, the suspect even fluently recited some knowledge about migratory birds. However, the prosecutor didn't believe his story at all. The man refused to confess, and the prosecutor resorted to violence. Despite interrogating him all night, the suspect still didn't say anything. All the guards disappeared, and the suspect was found dead in the detention center. The prosecutor responsible for interrogating the suspect was arrested as the murderer. The prosecutor caused the suspect's death during the interrogation. This immediately caused a huge uproar. Soon, Prosecutor Sia was put on trial. Colleagues testified that on the day of the interrogation, Prosecutor Sia sent everyone away and conducted the interrogation alone. The deceased's friends also confirmed that the deceased was in good health before the incident, making sudden death unlikely. The prosecutor realized that these witnesses were lying. He sought help from his superior, Prosecutor Wu, stating that he only hit the suspect twice and it couldn't have caused death. The higher-ups are also helpless. Every clue points to Prosecutor Sia, but they still proposed a solution. They want Prosecutor Sia to plead guilty first and then claim self-defense in the second trial. At that time, they will find a lawyer to defend him. Prosecutor Ka trusted his superiors, but during the second trial, his self-defense claim was ineffective. The judge convicted him of violent interrogation leading to death and abuse of power, sentencing him to 15 years in prison. Prosecutor Ka realized he was played by his superiors. This was not what they had agreed upon. But by then, no one believed him anymore. Thus, Prosecutor Ka was falsely accused of murder and wrongfully imprisoned. After entering prison, Prosecutor Ka faced violence from his cellmates due to offending many people outside. Despite this, he endured silently because he didn't commit murder and wanted to clear his name. In prison, the prosecutor wrote his defense. Unexpectedly, the warden found out and called him out, telling him to stop dreaming and just turn over a new leaf. It turns out that the director and the superior of the lower prosecutor, Prosecutor Wu, were determined not to allow his exoneration. The lower prosecutor could only grit his teeth and endure. Fortunately, as a prosecutor, he has a strong legal background and excellent professional skills. Prison guards with litigation issues all come to him for help. Prisoners who wanted to get out early also sought his help. Gradually, Prosecutor Ka became the leader among the inmates, thriving inside the prison. No one dared to bully him anymore. However, his wrongful conviction has yet to be overturned. 5 years later, a new group of prisoners arrived. Among them was Han Chi-won, a typical pretty boy who claimed to be a top graduate from a prestigious American university and spoke fluent English. However, he was actually a con artist. Using his exceptional looks and social skills, Han Chi-won deceived people for money and love. Despite this, many young women still willingly fell for him. As a con artist, Han Chi-won already had 9 prior convictions. This time marks his 10th. One day, the prison was broadcasting a program about migratory birds. Upon seeing this, Chi-won started talking about his knowledge of migratory birds. The prosecutor nearby immediately thought of something. The deceased Lee Jin-suk had also mentioned the exact same information about migratory birds. The prosecutor immediately questioned Chi-won about where he had heard this. He realized that it might be related to his own wrongful conviction case. Prosecutor Ka used his connections in the prison to uncover Chi-won's identity as a fraudster. Chi-won is applying for a reduced sentence. Prosecutor Ka uses this as leverage. If Chi Yuan can reveal what he wants to know, he'll help him get out of prison early. This deal was very profitable, and Chi Yuan agreed. It turns out that 5 years ago, a development company recruited a group of unemployed youths, and Han Chi Yuan was one of them. The development company paid them to learn about migratory birds and environmental protection. After some time, they were suddenly called to the resort under development and made to violently confront the police. Chi Yuan was smart and didn't participate in the fight. He slipped away. He doesn't know what happened afterward. Prosecutor Xia admired Chi Yuan's cunning and intelligence. They immediately decided to collaborate with Prosecutor Xia, helping Han Chi Yuan get out of prison. After his release, he also needs to find evidence outside to clear his name. Thus begins the collaboration between a former prosecutor and a con artist. The operations inside the prison involve 3 main steps. First, let Chi Yuan get acquainted with the people related to the case. Over the past 5 years, Prosecutor Xia has organized all the people and clues related to the case. First, there's the mafia-like development company, and then there's former Superior Prosecutor Wu. Now, Prosecutor Wu is running for office, so we should call him Congressman Wu. Finally, remember the faces and personalities of former colleagues Prosecutor Yang, Prosecutor Ka, and Chi Yuan. Prosecutor Ka used his connections in the prison to get the signature of his former colleague, Prosecutor Yang. He then had Chi Yuan practice forging the signature. After multiple practices, Han Chi Yuan's forgery was almost indistinguishable from the real one. Finally, using legal loopholes, successfully helped Han Chi Yuan get acquitted. Chi Yuan will be released from prison tomorrow. Whether as a collaboration or as a form of repayment, he promised to work hard outside to support the junior prosecutor. After being released from prison, Chi Yuan immediately contacted a group of people. They were the thugs hired by the development company to fight the police 5 years ago. They had once studied migratory bird knowledge together. Chi Yuan deliberately got the leader of the thugs drunk and then took advantage of his drunken state to extract information about the murder victim from 5 years ago. According to the thug, he suffers from severe asthma and must carry an inhaler at all times. However, the inhaler was missing that day. Chi Yuan secretly recorded the thug's statement and later sent the recording to Prosecutor Ka in prison. Prosecutor Ka immediately organized the recording content, then sent the written materials and audio files to the judge, requesting a retrial of the case. But this matter isn't that simple. The president of the development company unexpectedly found out and urgently contacted Congressman Wu. With only a month left until the election, they couldn't afford to let their past misdeeds be exposed. Congressman Wu scolded the president and ordered him to handle the aftermath as instructed. The boss called in the mafia and broke the legs of the informant. The informant is now paralyzed and still in a coma, making it impossible for him to testify. Additionally, Congressman Wu called in his former subordinate, Prosecutor Yang, to communicate with Prosecutor Ka. He warned not to expect to overturn the case with just a few recorded words. Prosecutor Yang conveyed Congressman Wu's message, making Prosecutor Ka realize that clearing his name would face significant obstacles. That's not all. The thug got his leg broken, and even Chi Yuan got scared. He told the prosecutor he was done with this. With Chi Yuan backing out, the prosecutor's grievances might never see the light of day. After quitting, Chi Yuan went back to his old ways. He got involved with a rich young woman and is about to become the prospective son-in-law of her family. But who would have thought that things weren't over? One day, while on the road, some thugs suddenly dragged him aside and beat him up. They threatened him, saying that if he didn't want his girlfriend to find out he was a fraud, he should mind his own business. Chi Yuan realized he was implicated by Prosecutor Xia's case. He went to see Prosecutor Xia, who warned him that even if he quits now, Congressman Wu would still send someone to kill him. At that time, he would have to live on the run every day. Chi Yuan is a smart person. Since there's no way out, he might as well go all the way. Thus, Chi Yuan had no choice but to continue fulfilling the cooperation agreement with the prosecutor.
수고하고 무거운 짐진 자들아.
As a con artist, Han Chi Yuan naturally uses his charm and intelligence. He first showcases his acting skills by pretending to be a fan of Congressman Wu and infiltrates the election team. They stir up the atmosphere at the scene, took a photo with Congressman Wu, and then used their charm. He seduced the female accountant from the election team. After an intimate moment, he secretly photographed the campaign ledger of Councillor Wu, which contained many suspicious funds. Finally, expose the ledger to the media once everything is ready. Prosecutor Ka requested a retrial of his case, claiming that Congressman Wu framed him. Given the irregular election funds of Congressman Wu, the judge also suspected foul play.
제가 모르는...
Agreed. Just when they thought justice was near, Congressman Wu made a call to the prison warden. The warden, being an ally of Wu, immediately ordered a search of Prosecutor Ka's cell. He was isolated in a cell under the pretext of carrying contraband. Meanwhile, despite the media exposing the illegal election funds, Congressman Wu's approval rating remains high. Currently, Congressman Wu has the upper hand. Prosecutor Ka urgently contacts Ji Yuan, asking him to visit the prison for detailed discussions. Han Chi-won arrived. Both sides knew the situation was urgent. This might be their last meeting in prison. Prosecutor Ka told Chi-won that he would have to rely on him for everything in the future. Before ending the meeting, Prosecutor Ka recited a prayer. Chi-yuan, being smart, realized that the prayer contained numbers. After getting out, he immediately searched online and discovered that these numbers were a code. Chi-yuan immediately went to the bank and withdrew a large sum of money using a password. It was Prosecutor Xia's money. Following Prosecutor Xia's instructions, Chi-yuan handed the money to a former prosecutor colleague. This colleague was a witness in the case back then. Under pressure from Congressman Wu, he cooperated and gave false testimony. Prosecutor Xia hopes that this former colleague will testify on his behalf. Next, following Prosecutor Ka's instructions, Chi-yuan disguised himself as a new prosecutor to start contacting insiders within the inspection system. With his high intelligence and eloquence, Chi-yuan quickly gained the favor of the prosecutors. Thanks to their recommendations, he was able to approach one of the key figures in the case. Former Prosecutor Ka's colleague, Chi-won, claimed to have trained under the same mentor as Prosecutor Yang, quickly bringing them closer. Later, Chi-yuan forged documents to smoothly enter the prosecutor's office. After building rapport with Prosecutor Yang, he secretly signed the witness attendance application form when Yang wasn't looking. This is the application for Congressman Wu to be a witness in the prosecutor's case. Finally, the signature practiced for many days in prison is useful. At this point, Han Chi-won was very pleased, but the crisis was not yet over. One day, a thug from a development company accidentally discovered Chi-yuan. Chi-yuan had just returned to his girlfriend's mansion, but her brother had already found out that he was a fraud. Right after his future brother-in-law took his girlfriend away, the thugs from the development company came looking for Chi-yuan. Chi-yuan tried to blend in but was still discovered. Just as the thugs were about to attack him, the police car arrived. The prosecutor arrived in time, arrested the thug, and saved Chi-yuan, all thanks to Prosecutor Yang. Senator Wu, upon learning that he would soon become a witness in the prosecutor's case, angrily confronted Prosecutor Yang. He was blamed for incompetence. If he gets involved in the prosecutor's case, his political future could be at risk. Unexpectedly, Prosecutor Yang, pushed to his limit, couldn't hold back anymore. He wasn't in cahoots with Congressman Wu. He was just following orders from his superiors. But after the investigation, Prosecutor Yang discovered that besides illegal election funds, Congressman Wu was involved in many other dirty deeds. To avoid being implicated, Prosecutor Yang decided to switch sides. He ordered his men to capture the thugs from the development company to thoroughly investigate the case from years ago. Accidentally, he saved Chi-yuan. During the investigation of the case from years ago, Prosecutor Yang also discovered Chi-yuan's true identity. Chi-yuan faked his identity and posed as a prosecutor, which is a serious crime. But fortunately, he is very clever. Prosecutor Yang loves to show off. Chi-yuan suggested that if he could overturn Prosecutor Ka's case and convict Congressman Wu, it would definitely attract widespread media attention. Prosecutor Yang indeed fell for it. Meanwhile, Congressman Wu is maneuvering in every way to protect his political future. After 5 years, he visits Prosecutor Ka in prison, but he's here to make a deal. It turns out that soon there will be a special pardon in the prison. Congressman Wu promised the prosecutor that he would be released under the special pardon. The implication is that the prosecutor should not reopen the case. However, the prosecutor insists on reopening it. He cannot live with the burden of a murder charge. Seeing the prosecutor so persistent, Congressman Wu directly revealed the truth of the case from 5 years ago. It was Congressman Wu who took the victim's aerosol. The cause of his asthma attack and death was related to the development of the resort years ago. It turns out that Congressman Wu was behind the scenes, instructing the development company to hire thugs to pose as protesters and clash with the police, and intentionally injured the police. Afterwards, the USS Beautiful, the development company's funds were all directed to Counselor Wu's election team. This was a premeditated plan for his political future. To keep this secret, Congressman Wu killed the suspect who was arrested and pinned all the blame on Prosecutor Ka, who was investigating the case. After learning the truth, Prosecutor Ka's resolve became even stronger. He was determined to make Congressman Wu confess in court. However, it was clear that Congressman Wu was not easy to deal with. A month later, the retrial of Prosecutor Ka's case began, and Congressman Wu appeared as a witness. Prosecutor Koka, both the plaintiff and the defendant, has not appeared yet. The judge announced a 30-minute delay for the trial. Yes, it was Congressman Wu's doing. Congressman Wu colluded with the prison warden to beat up a prisoner and threatened him to stab the prosecutor before the trial to prevent him from testifying. Chi Yuan realized something was wrong. Fearing he might get involved, he urgently booked a flight to escape. But at the courthouse entrance, an ambulance was seen. At this moment, the judge was about to announce a postponement. Then the prosecutor arrived just in time. Yes, even though he was stabbed, he still attended the trial. Thus, the retrial of the murder case from 5 years ago began. Because he was with the victim at the resort 5 years ago, Chi Yuan became the first witness in this case. Chi Yuan testified that the victim had severe asthma and needed an inhaler to breathe. Moreover, Chi Yuan also mentioned that he has a good relationship with the president of the development company. The president once asked him to deliver a sum of money to Councillor Wu, who was running for office at the time. This implies that Councilman Wu's campaign funds all came from illegal contributions by a development company. Of course, this was all based on the clues later investigated by Chi Yuan. Chi Yuan showed photos he took at the resort development site and pictures with Congressman Wu from the election team. The situation is very unfavorable for Congressman Wu. Next, it's his turn to testify as a prosecution witness. And the one responsible for questioning him is Prosecutor Yang. Prosecutor Yang discovered that the CEO of the development company had been investigated multiple times for illegal financial activities. These cases were handled by Congressman Wu when he was still a prosecutor. Under his investigation, these cases were eventually left unresolved. This is enough to prove there is an improper relationship between Congressman Wu and the president of the development company. Next, Prosecutor Ka, as the defendant, confronts Congressman Wu. Prosecutor Ka states murder requires a motive, and those who benefit from the victim's death are usually considered the culprits. But he had no conflict of interest with the victim. On the contrary, Congressman Wu could silence Li Jinshi by killing him, thus covering up his collusion with the development company. But clearly, without evidence, Senator Wu wasn't convinced. However, Prosecutor Ka was evidently fully prepared. Prosecutor Ka stated that the records from the crime scene back then clearly mentioned it. The victim had asthma and needed an inhaler. However, after the victim died, the inhaler was missing. It is reasonable to assume that someone hid or destroyed the aerosol, and that person must be the killer. As soon as these words were spoken, the media at the trial expressed their agreement. But at this moment, Congressman Wu still refuses to admit guilt. It's okay. Prosecutor Xia also has direct evidence. The bag of money Han Chi-wan withdrew from the bank a few days ago came in handy. After receiving financial support from Prosecutor Xia, the witness from back then, who was once a colleague of Prosecutor Xia, decided to support him. The colleague intentionally approached Congressman Wu. She asked him if he had disposed of the aerosol from back then and secretly recorded the conversation. Therefore, this is the key evidence. Moreover, Prosecutor Ka presented direct evidence. The aerosol can. It turns out that a colleague secretly hid the aerosol for self-preservation and kept it until now. But even with irrefutable evidence, today's Senator Wu continued to argue, even claiming that the aerosol can was a fake piece of evidence. This statement was caught by Prosecutor Ka. How did Congressman Wu know this was fake evidence? Prosecutor Ka then played the rest of the recording. In a conversation with a former colleague, Congressman Wu personally stated, "Don't worry, the aerosol has already been thrown into the Han River." Yes, the evidence presented by Prosecutor Ka is indeed fake. He wanted Congressman Wu to confess to the murder. The words of Congressman Wu in the recording are equivalent to admitting to the murder and destroying evidence. The trial has finally concluded. The prosecutor's 5-year ordeal has been vindicated, and Congressman Wu has been found guilty. Prosecutor Yang also gained significant recognition, and everyone was happy in the end. At the end of the movie, Prosecutor Han is released from prison. Han Chi-wan comes to pick him up. By this time, the two have become as close as brothers. As a spin-off film, this movie may lack narrative and plot precision, but the message it conveys is genuinely profound. It's never been a lofty theory, but a truth that must be practiced. If you respect the law, you will ultimately be respected by the law. If you desecrate the law, you will eventually be desecrated by it. The punishment of the law and the retribution of good and evil are always interconnected. Regardless of our position, we should always hold a sense of reverence. The film portrays the essence of upholding the law. Despite being a former prosecutor, Congressman Wu, who knows the law, still tramples on it and is ultimately condemned by it. Prosecutor Ka, who claims to act in the name of justice, but often uses violence against suspects, is also a distortion of the law. Fortunately, the prosecutor learned a valuable lesson from his 5 years of twists and turns in prison. From then on, he decided to live kindly. Even if he wanted to uphold justice, he would not challenge the law's boundaries in its name. The movie ends.